There is no going back now. This recording, this webinar has now started live, and we are going to be talking all about SharePoint mobile app, specifically, obviously, showcasing a lot of the new stuff, but also focusing on a lot of just what can you do with the SharePoint mobile app. There's a lot of artificial intelligence that's been put into this new design, and there's also just a redesign in how you navigate the app and how you get to your content, people, some answers much more quickly. Throughout the webinar, we're going to be asking you to provide any questions that you have. We'll see them in the Q&A window, and we'll take a couple of times to glance over to see if there are any questions, but feel free to ask them up front, ask them during if you have specific questions on certain things that we show or say, and we will answer all those questions by the end of the broadcast. We've got a lot to share and show, and we've got a lot to cover, so very happy that you're here, and we'll get started. I'll first introduce myself. My name is Mark Cashman, and I'm a Senior Product Manager on the SharePoint team, and I focus on everything around the intranet. If you think about what we talk around inner loop, outer loop, this is a lot around the outer loop, but I also focus on the inner loop and personal loop, which is maybe what we're talking about today. And I'll introduce my friend here, Nate Clinton. Nate is on the engineering side of things. Nate?
Hey everyone, again my name is Nate. I am a program manager leading the efforts for the SharePoint mobile team. So me and a group of folks, we work really hard to get you guys the right set of features, and we're really excited about this latest release, and I'm excited to talk about it today.
Yeah, so if you guys have any great kudos or accolades, that's Nate. If you've got any feedback in any form, that's Nate as well, because the whole idea of this update is it's been updated based on a lot of what people have told us that they like or don't like, and sometimes that don't like button is a pretty powerful one, and Nate and team take it pretty seriously. So let's start cruising. Again, if you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A window. If you want to go and read more, or certainly download the app and try some of these things, if you do it in the next couple minutes, you can try almost everything that Nate is showing you, with the one caveat that he'll be using a beta build, but essentially it's the same thing that you got in the store as of today.
Yeah, and we're rolling out too. So some of you may not have it yet, but if you don't have it yet, I'll talk a little bit about this towards the end of the demo, but it's coming. It's rolling out right now.
Yeah, and we've got a couple of staged FAQs at the end where we talk a little bit about the expected rollout and maybe even a teaser at some of the things that we'll showcase at Ignite, which we hope you join us. So if you think about where we are in this world of Microsoft 365, a lot of what we're going to be talking today is how this service is built for teamwork, how people can come together, work together, collaborate, communicate. And that's using a number of different tools and certainly working across regions, across a diverse set of people within your organization. And it may include working with people outside your organization. There's a huge component, obviously, of how Microsoft 365 unlocks your creativity. If you think about how you create your content, whether that's something within the Office realm, PowerPoint, Word, Excel, or if you think about it in the SharePoint world, that's creating news, creating a SharePoint page, or if you have the ownership and certainly the impetus to do it, to create a whole site experience for others within your organization, whether that's at a collaboration level, that's a SharePoint team site, or that's something at the broadcast layer, which is more of a communication site, or if you're organizing all those things together, that's the hub site. All of that has a lot of information, a lot of connections, a lot of how people are working together, and that all comes through on the SharePoint mobile app. So if you have the SharePoint mobile app and you're looking to access your content, your people, and to be aware and notified and engage, that's all about how Microsoft 365 is built for teamwork through the lens of the SharePoint mobile app. Obviously, everything that you do is managed and under the same SLA and some of the same certifications around how it's administered, how people manage your sites, your tenant, your whole organization, and that just plays through in how you can access certain things or potentially not access them through the SharePoint mobile app. And on the side of intelligence, that's one of the themes we'll run through today. It obviously plays into how our security investments are also backed by AI. So if you think about this as a full suite on how you use Office 365 on your Windows desktop, through how you are mobile and getting work done while on the go, certainly you should feel safe and secure and connected and engaged. So again, hashtag GetSPMobile, join along. If you think about what the SharePoint mobile app is all about, certainly you could think about it as a way to get to all my SharePoint content or content that's shared and stored through SharePoint. But to drill into that a little bit, we want to have the SharePoint mobile app help you keep productive and certainly up to date, which means engaged while you're on the go. So through the SharePoint mobile app, you'll be able to access all your team sites and all your communication sites, and of course, as they're organized under hub sites. And that includes all the content within, which is lists, libraries, your documents, your files, your information. And if people are building applications off of those lists, there are certainly ways to get to that data as well and to adjust it if you need to, or at least view it and share it. So you'll be able to read and create while on the go. News experience, like Nate will show you, is a great experience to look at all the content that's in a news article, and that could be very dynamic content, even something as sophisticated as a Power BI data model shown through the mobile experience is a really great one, where you actually have access to pinch and zoom and tap around to get to the data, or at least a filtered view of the data that you want throughout all the different web parts that you could apply onto a SharePoint page. But because it's the power of accessing all the content and people that you work with, it of course allows you to do a search and discovery, both going to actively look for something if you want to look for a person or look for a piece of content, or through a lot of the ways that Nate and team have been building it off of the backbone of AI using the Microsoft Graph, you'll be able to actually discover things that people are building or working on around you based on who you work with and what you work on. There's a lot of effort and research being put into the notification system, and right now it's off the backbone of what we do with news articles and when somebody comments on a news article, but expect this area to grow in how you're alerted and drawn into the conversation, and of course can reply back and certainly provide people feedback while you're on the go, which really lends it to, as you start making decisions on what you're working on or things that you've wanted to save for later or engage on at another time. Through the Me tab, as you'll see, it's a great place to stay informed, and certainly for those quick views, you might go back to something while on your mobile or look at it quickly and want to go back to it later. So again, this is your last chance to dive in, get SP Mobile, get the app, and follow along. Last thing from me is really just to talk about how SharePoint is connected. And when you think of this window into all of your content, it's SharePoint that is that consistent back-end service that's providing content to all of these endpoints. So if you're working on documents and collaborating, whether it's directly through Office, whether you're accessing them through OneDrive, whether you're staying connected through a connected team site like we mentioned earlier, you could be accessing just files from different endpoints like Microsoft Teams or via Outlook. If you're using Office 365 groups in a connected fashion, you've got that connected document library. But you really have anywhere access to get to your content, to engage. If you're building out broader portals for communication, you might have the engagement supported by Yammer, and the Yammer web part is a great web and mobile experience to engage people, to have a place where they can ask questions based on your communication. And all throughout, certainly there's the higher end of building out portals, communication sites, hub sites, and even having a lot of your existing investments with classic publishing and classic team sites, being able to come through and have those be accessed through the SharePoint mobile app. By the nature of it, they're backed by SharePoint, the service. Everything that we do in SharePoint with Office 365 is backed by security at the highest level, from the physical data centers to the routers to the service itself. There's a lot that surrounds the product that you think of as SharePoint that helps build in that level of security. Certainly AI, if you go in and have a unique, personalized, relevant, dynamic experience, that's because there's AI infused at every level. And it's not like you turn to the AI portal. It's in every app and experience. We want to provide you that most personalized, relevant experience to get to the content that you want, to get to the people that you're looking for. And finally, it's not just a black box. A lot of what we've been doing in SharePoint pages, web parts, headers and footers, and with the power of the patterns and practices teams and some of those development patterns, there's a lot of extensibility in how you can build out the sites that you want. In terms of how you might have built portals in the past, you can build out new dynamic modern sites today and into the future. So with that, last bit in terms of just when we say AI infused, what does that mean? You might have seen this graphic when we first launched Delve a number of years ago, but now it's true across the service in Office 365. How we build this information, or I should say how the AI on the back end builds a pattern of what is Mark, who is Mark, what is he doing, who does he work with, what are the conversations that he's active in, what are the documents that he's editing, sharing, viewing, what meetings is he attending, what groups does he belong to. As you start to find out the commonality between me and other people throughout the organization, there may be 2 degrees, 3 degrees of separation between me and others. And as they start to engage more in groups, share their content, and of course work in a different way across the organization. And as that changes over time, it may be my current real world right now is working on Ignite 2018. So there's a lot of people cross group that I'm working on that are also working on Ignite. Come Ignite, shortly after, we all go on a little hiatus, take a little break, and then on to the next project, which might be a new set of people, which ultimately leads to a new set of content. But think of that AI in the background as always asking, who is Mark and what is he working on? And what can I promote to him in the most accurate and relatable way that based on that relevancy and a highly personalized dynamic experience. All right, so enough show or tell. I think I was telling Nate. I think it's time to now show.
Yeah, can you bring up Connect?
Yeah, so we're going to switch over and we'll get Nate's desktop showing here in just a second. And we will make sure that we can see the demo, and then you're going to see a whole bunch of great stuff. So sharing out your desktop.
Can you bring it up on yours?
Oh, yeah.
It's not.
I don't see it here.
Can you open up Connect for yours?
Let me stop sharing. So FYI, I should have mentioned we're using some new technology with Microsoft Teams. And now we're going to add some content. You need to reshare. Share your desktop.
Yeah. We use yours.
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
Mine's not cooperating right now. So.
Give us one moment while we switch. So. All right. So give us 2 seconds. This should be loading up so you'll be able to see it on your end. And then I'm going to hand it over to Nate, and he'll take us through a really nice demo of the SharePoint mobile app. And Nate, so what phone are you showing it on, but just by nature of for the demo today?
So this is a Samsung 8. We support Android and iOS, of course, but today we're going to walk through on a Samsung, and this is a beta version. So here on the engineering team, and the marketing team, we always like to use the beta versions and test out the latest and greatest. So I'm going to be showing you some of that today. But this is very similar to what we're releasing, what we're currently rolling out. So no surprises here. All right, so let's go ahead and get started here. First, I'm going to start on the Find tab. So the Find tab is the middle tab. It's the default tab. It's where you land when you launch the app. And this is the place, as Mark was mentioning, where we really started to bring some of these intelligence pieces together. We'll show those in other places as well, but this is kind of the showcase of some of the intelligence pieces that we provide, that Microsoft provides, coming into one experience. So let's walk through this first. There's three main aspects to the Find tab that I'll talk about. The first is Browse. That's all your site, your people, your files, all driven by intelligence. The second is your search experience, which I'll walk through. And then the third is quick access. We'll get to that here in a couple minutes. So first, let's start with Find. So I'm gonna scroll down to my frequent sites. You'll notice that we've taken some of the Find, the Sites tab that was a separate tab before, the People tab, and we brought them here. And this is a bit of a change for folks, and I think we want to hear what people think, and we'll continue to update. But we believe this experience, especially once you play around with it and you use it, you'll see that it's much faster and gets you to the stuff that you care about really quick. So, and I'll kind of walk through how that happens. So here on the site section, we'll start there. Let me go and click on the site. So I'll click on Project Sirona. And you'll see that what we're showing here is a modern page. So previously we had shown a lot of native experiences for your pages, but now with modern pages, we want to be able to show the page that you put your work into. You've added web parts, you've done layouts. We want to make sure that we honor that and show that. So what we have here is, this is the responsive page. You can see, there's some weirdness going on the bottom there, but you can see activity, you can see a Power BI web part, you can see documents. So we're showing all the web parts that you've created, and we're showing them again in this beautiful responsive type of experience. In addition to that, we also have our own experience built on top of that. So in the upper left, there's the hamburger menu or the menu. You'll see in the menu, we have links to things that you're used to, like news, activity files, and lists. This is a group, so it's group connected. So there's group conversations here as well. And then you have on the lower section, the different links that you put in there in your what we call the quick launch, which is your left nav menu generally. At the top, this is a hub connected site. So you'll see at the top, you can then click the down arrow to see the different sites within the hub, and then the up arrow to bring that back. The addition to that, you can also share this site. So there's a share button in the kind of the upper middle right, and there's also a follow star, so you can follow from there. Let me see. And then again, yes, this is a connected group. So this one has 5 members and it's private. Now let's go back to Find here. And let's go look at what More Sites brings you. So you'll see here next to Frequent Sites is a link called More Sites. So I'll click on that and I'll go into a view that has 3 different pivots. So starting on Frequent, this is all my frequent sites. You can see some of these are followed. You can see what we call tidbits for each one, and tidbits are really the last couple things that have happened in that site that we think would be valuable to you. So again, this is intelligence. In addition to frequent sites being the sites we think are interesting to you, these are tidbits for each site that we think are valuable in how you go and explore and take advantage of this view. In addition to frequent, we have followed. So I can click on followed and see all my followed sites. And we also have suggested. Suggested, again, is us using intelligence, looking to see how we can find different sites that we think will be valuable to you that you have not followed yet and that aren't yet one of your frequent sites. Okay, so let me show you something I'm really excited about. And we call them overflow menus, but essentially they're a way for us to go and add more value at this view rather than having you dig into the individual site. If you just want to get to something like documents or share something or look at your lists. So if I go to Project Sirona and I click on the ... on the right-hand side, you'll see a full menu of different things you can get to right from here. So I can get to activity, and activity takes me directly to all the activity for that specific site. I can go back in here and I can look at lists. And there, I think there, I'm going to go someplace different for lists. There's no list for that site yet, but let me go into more sites. Let me go find a good place. Let me find another site that has lists. Let's see. Okay, let's go into electronic events. So I click on the ... in this view as well. I'll click on lists. We provide a fairly exhaustive experience for lists. Lists is one of those areas that we're always adding more stuff, and we have plans, as Mark mentioned, to add additional things like better support for Flow and for different aspects of the Microsoft ecosystem. So that's coming, so keep an eye out for that. If I go into events to staff, I'll see all the different items in this specific list. Let me add something. I'm going to click on the plus button here. I'm going to enter a title. Let's call this the Seattle Conference. Oops. I'm going to event coordinator. Let's say Mark is our guy. It does lookup, so we'll click on him there. Estimated size.
Are you adding tasks for me to do? Do I have to go do something?
Maybe, we'll see. Large, it's going to be a large event. It's Contoso hosted. Let me just add a status here as well. So I'll say resourcing is in process. Okay, so that's good enough for now. I'm going to save that. And now if I go at the bottom, there it is. So fairly basic, but a lot of thought has been put into how do we build the best experience here for native that's not a web page, and you'll see us add more and start to integrate more of the responsive experiences that the web provides as well. So let me go back to site. Let me go back to the Find tab, and the other thing that you can do with the ... the overflow menu is you can save stuff. So let me go to, let's look at it's a good one here. This Contoso purchasing permission is great. So let me ... on that and save that for later. You should be good there.
And just to cue you up a little bit, I think after this we've got a couple questions that have come in. And we'll take a couple questions and we'll move on.
Yep, I'll go through the find section, and then it'll be a great place for us to take a few questions. Okay, so next let's go to people. So you'll see that on the item I just saved, the little bookmark shows up there. So that one now is saved, and we'll talk more about saved here in a few minutes. For people, it's fairly straightforward, but very powerful. So with people, we show you, again, through intelligent means, those working around you, those you interact with most, those who we think would be most valuable for you to have right at your fingertips. So in this case, Mark, he interacts with Johanna, Irvin, Patty, Alex, Lee. Let's take a look at Patty here. So I'm going to click on Patty.
And one thing I think to keep in mind here as well is there are people card experiences throughout Office 365. If you're in Outlook, you hover over somebody's name, you would find information about Patty in a very similar look and feel, but of course it's the access to how to contact her, what people is she working with in files.
That's right.
But it's a consistent people card experience. This is just how you guys have rendered it on the mobile.
That's right. So you'll look at Patty here. I can look at the files she has been looking at, her recent files. I can look at her direct reports and her org structure. So Patty is the top of the chain here. She's the president, so she has folks underneath her, and then who she works with, those are her peers. But if you were to go in to see Mark, you'd see who his managers are, his managers, and so on. I can do see more to go look at more information about Patty, including some of her contact information, her department, and an about section. And as Mark mentioned, you'll see this section grow as well, since we're all working together across Office and Microsoft to have a common experience around this. As we add more functionality, we all get it, more or less. I mean, there's some work group involved there, but it's a much more efficient system that we're excited about being able to take advantage of. All right, so now with files. Files in this experience is a bit different than where you generally see it, in that these are files across your entire tenant. So what we're doing is we're bringing you all the files that we think are important to you, files that you've recently opened, taken action on, across all the different sites you work on or interact with in your tenant. So we believe this is pretty powerful, and we provide the same sort of experience with these that we do with other files elsewhere. So I can go to a file, I can go see more files, and here you'll get your full list of recent files. I can go to popular. I'm not sure there's any popular right now, because this is a demo tenant, but you can see popular files here. Again, that's us recommending and providing to you the files we think are popular within your organization based off of how they're accessed and so on. And then in saved, we have a list of your saved files here as well. So from files, I can go in and let me open the Contoso purchasing permissions. And what we'll do is we will open it quickly in our own PDF viewer. So this is a viewer we provide to open files of different types. And then from there, you can open it in Word or Excel, PowerPoint, if you have those apps installed. So we want to get you to those files super fast and then give you the way to go and dive into them, edit them through the proper Microsoft app as well, if it's available.
And the important thing here is if you were to press that Word icon in the bottom right, it's going to take you in the ability to edit within Word Mobile.
That's right.
But it's keeping the file in place in SharePoint. Right. So you're still working off of a single file. There could be multiple people accessing it, as you would imagine, with near-time or real-time authoring.
Yep.
But certainly the value there is it's not creating a version of or a weird orphaned file. It's keeping it in SharePoint, just giving you access to the file.
Correct. Okay, and then finally for the Find tab, and we'll talk about the quick access section here and we go into search a bit in more depth, but the Find tab has two more sections, popular searches. This is a demo tenant, so there aren't a lot of searches happening here, but you can think of like the popular searches in your tenant, in your organization, things like, travel time or vacation schedule or holiday schedule or, anything that's popular in your entire tenant would show up here. And then featured links, and when you click on that, you go straight into our search experience. For featured links, these are links that you can create from SharePoint Home if you're a tenant or a SharePoint admin. And these could be things like the portal here, your human resources web page, training, whatever you want to put here that you want available to all your users. If you're an admin, would show up here as well. And you can go into more links to see the full set of links if there's more than just 5. All right, so let's take a quick break and we can do some Q&A.
Yeah, we've got a few questions that have come through. I think some based on what you're showing and some just based on general questions for SharePoint Mobile.
Yep.
The first one that I noticed was when using the Yammer web part, it doesn't look like it's mobile or can't access it through the mobile. And that's true. If you use the classic version of the Yammer web part, either the actual classic web part, or if you explicitly in your web, when you're designing the page, use the classic form of the Yammer web part, that one will not render in mobile. But if you use the updated version of the Yammer web part where you can show popular conversations, conversations that are relevant to you, or just explicit conversations that you choose to showcase across any group that you have access to, those will show up in mobile, and those are ones that you can engage on. But if you've selected the classic view, then unfortunately the classic view, if you use that feature in the web part, looks great on web, but it does not render on mobile. Right. But there are ways around that.
Yep.
So another question, would I be able to see Find tab when I connect SharePoint server on premises?
So currently, right now, it's just for SharePoint Online. We are working on plans for on-prem in the future. I don't have details on the timing of that, but right now it's just SharePoint Online.
So Nate, a good one when people are taking advantage of the extensibility of SharePoint. The question is about when I customize, what's the experience? But specifically the question is, will a custom header added using the SharePoint framework extensions appear in the SharePoint mobile app? So if, like per se, they maybe are taking advantage of the new SharePoint starter kit or are using those patterns in their own custom sites, what's that experience?
So what we've tested so far, everything should work as expected. SharePoint, as you know, is a huge platform where you can do all kinds of stuff. So I think there may be some cases when it doesn't look quite right, but we're constantly trying to make sure that the responsive experience you get that we render within the app takes advantage of things like the header and custom footers and so on. So that's a good area where if you run into problems, definitely let us know and we can hunt that down and figure out what's going on there. But they should work, yes.
Yeah, and just to give everybody a sense, a little bit more depth on the question, if you are using the SharePoint framework, which is, you might have seen the hashtag SPFX, it is a new framework that's intended to be able to be giving developers the tools to build client-side and to have mobile by default. So if you're building a web part, a header, a footer, some form of extension that the framework supports, that should play into mobile. Certainly test it as you would any other custom development, but it is something that if you, again, look at the SharePoint starter kit, we'll put in a link to get you to that, or I'll provide that afterwards. It's a great starter kit, but it also is meant to be and tested on mobile. The access point is mobile.
Yep.
We'll take one more question because we sort of front-loaded it with the fact that we would answer this question. But Nate, it gives you an opportunity to share a little bit more about the rollout. The question is, when I go and update my app through the Apple App Store, I downloaded and it looks like I updated the app, but I don't see the new UI. Can you explain a little bit maybe across Apple and Android, the today experience?
Yeah, so we are rolling out both Android and iOS right now, and the reason why we're doing that is to make sure that as we roll out, people are able to provide feedback and we're able to make sure that everything's working as expected. So iOS right now is rolling out to about 25% of folks, and then we will up that probably in the next week or so. Android, same. So you should see it jump from 25 to 50% probably in the next week, week and a half. And then probably after that, if everything looks good, we'll go straight to 100%. So if you don't see it yet, keep on checking back. It should show up here before too long.
So per the rollout plan, just from your perspective, obviously managing this pretty closely, how is the rollout going? Are we feeling like we're on track and as expected, as by design?
So far, so good. I mean, I think we've gotten, we did a lot of studies, a lot of research. We did the dog food program, so on and so forth, before releasing to make sure that this change was something that folks wanted. And I think we realized that there's some big changes happening in certain places here, and that may be hard for people to adapt to. But over time, for those that have a tough time initially, we really do believe that this is going to be something that helps with productivity. And as you see us add more intelligence to this, as you see us add more notifications, as you see us do more with lists and with sites, we think that this will be a pretty big continuous change for users that will really make working on the go with SharePoint a lot easier.
Great. So I think the net of it is definitely go to the stores, make sure you update the app, and within a number of weeks, if not sooner, you will have the new experience. And obviously it'll be exactly what you're seeing here. Essentially, if you're on an Android phone, very, very similar, which is what we'll focus on just towards the end if you're using it on iOS. So Nate, enough of this Q&A. We'll get back to it. We'll answer all questions. We certainly will have time.
Okay.
But I think to get to seeing more, I think the one question I just wanted to ask as you transition is, this is the new Find tab experience. Can you just describe for people that maybe haven't seen the update yet, what they would see now versus what they'll see today, the multiple tabs that are now collapsed into the Find tab?
Yeah, so today, or for those of you that have not seen the new experience yet, we have 5 tabs. We have a news tab, a sites tab, a people tab, a me tab, and a links tab. And what we've done is, based off of data and based off of how users were using the app and what we think is the best approach to stop being the everything for SharePoint and try to focus more on being the right thing for mobile for SharePoint users, we've taken a few of those tabs, people, links, and sites, and merged them into the Find tab. And then with the Find tab, we've also added files, popular searches as well, and then the quick access, and then search. So this Find tab does a lot of stuff. We still have the Me tab, we still have the News tab, and I'll talk about those here in a few minutes.
Did you guys ever consider just calling it the Find app?
You know, it's SharePoint first, for sure. SharePoint is obviously who we are and what we do, and I think the big challenge for us was, how do we create an experience that handles the thousands of different ways you can use SharePoint in a way that is most common across all those users. And we think that search and getting back to your content and finding stuff is really one of the top pillars there, along with notifications, which I'll talk about, which we're working on, and then news, which I know is not everyone uses that yet. And for us to have an entire tab devoted to news, I know that's probably a little bit confusing to some folks, but we really believe that news is powerful, and we're looking at ways to make sure that news is great for teams that don't necessarily use team news either yet. So that's a bit further down the road, but that's definitely on our radar to make sure that we can provide value to everybody. Okay, so let's go and talk about search. So we've enhanced search in a few different ways. Number one, search is front and center. It's super important. We want to make it powerful results you care about fast. So if I click into search, you'll see a few different things. First, we have what we call zero query, which means we want to provide you answers, we provide you results before you have to type anything. In this case, you can see your personal history of stuff you've typed, which you can remove if you want, so you can delete those things. And then also the popular searches within your organization. Again, in this specific demo tenant, there's only one, but you would expect that there would be several there. And then all of the content that you've touched, gone to, seen, opened recently. As I start typing, you'll see that we start to weed down through all the different, not only the different things that you saw in the zero query, but also we go to the service and pull down additional content that we think via an intelligent query would be valuable to you. So I'm just going to search for Contoso, pretty broad. I'm going to do my search. You'll see it comes back pretty fast, so we really work to improve perf on search, and we'll continue with that. And the big thing that we've done here as well is we've provided a few additional pivots, different ways to filter your search results, and we've also made it personalized. So doing a search for a document before was great, although that document that you wanted could have been number 1000 in the search results. Now we personalize the results, so you'll see the documents that are most applicable to you first. So I can click on sites and go to that pivot. I can go to files. I can go to people. And from all these views, I can action on these things just as I would action anywhere else. So I can go to a file and I can save it for later. I can share it. Let me go and just share this file. So I can, when I want to share, I can share it for edit or view. And we go and fetch the link. And then I can take that link and I can share it via Gmail, this is Android phone, email, Bluetooth, Outlook, whatever you have on your device, you can go and share that. So we have sharing for different types of assets like files, news posts, which is pretty powerful. So in addition to being personalized, again, you can take the action from all those. You can save them for later here. But search is one of those areas that we're really investing a ton in, and you'll see search become even more powerful as we add more smarts to zero query, as we add more smarts to the query box and the type as you go, including being able to get to people faster. There's lots of things we want to do there that we think will be very powerful. Okay, so finally on the Find tab, we have quick access, which is the top section of the Find tab. And what we're doing there and why this is exciting for me is this is really a canvas for us to go and build all kinds of intelligence. So right now, quick access is just the last 3 things that you touched. And we've actually got a lot of feedback that that's pretty powerful. And we may extend that a bit, but what we really want to do in the future is make this not just the things you last touched, but instant answers or quick responses. So you can think you're in here and you're on location and an instant answer shows up that says, the conference map, or you are walking to a room and we are able to show you information about the building that you're going to, or we know that the holiday schedule has been super searched a ton lately and we know that it'll be valuable to you, and we bring that up there. So a place where we can put answers that you can go and get to the stuff you care about really quickly. That's what this will become over time as we add more intelligence, and we have other great ideas as well that we're looking at. So this is quick access, and from here you can go back to the things. You can, if it's a file or if it's a site, you can take action on it. If it's a news post, you can take action on it. But essentially, this is where you go back to the things that you were just doing. Okay, let's talk about news. So we'll go to the news tab. And here you see a slightly new layout for news where we've made it a bit cleaner. Some of these don't have descriptions. They just have web parts, or they just are just the image and the title. So you're not seeing description there, but you can see what you'd see if you had a description text. And we can click on one. Let's see, let's go to new headquarters in Los Angeles. And you can see how this will render, again, in the rich, responsive way, because this is us taking the responsive page and then putting stuff around it to be able to provide a native experience for things like looking at the menu and getting back to the site that this was in, saving it for later, searching on it, things like that. Oops, we just got a sign in. See, that's what happens when you're using beta software. And you can also, I can go and browse all those. I can save them for later. I can share them. But let me go and create a news post. Let me go back to the Find tab. I'm going to go into a site. So you may be having some network issues here, but let me find a site. Let me go into electronic events. And I'm going to go into here again is the full site experience. I'm going to go into news. And I'm going to create a new news post. So I'm going to hit plus there. I'm going to say webinar. Oops. And that means, because Mark is whispering in my ear. So let me just add something here.
Hey, you're doing great.
It's actually interesting to type and demo at the same time. Okay. All right, there we go. Let me add a picture. Maybe I'll add an image. I'll take a photo of Mark here. All right, I got that.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to add that. And then that's probably good enough. I think having a picture of Mark and no text is probably sufficient. So I'm going to hit publish. And you can, this is something that we've seen used a lot for on the go. You're at an event, you want to do a quick status. Our group uses a ton to share how things are going and progress on features and talking about the team. So once it's there, we will load it in your, so right there you see it there, webinar get SP mobile. And then it'll show up in the feed eventually as well, in probably a minute or two. So that's news, lots of stuff happening in there. Oops. Sorry about that. Okay, now let's go to Me, and we'll wrap it up here in just a second. So in the Me tab, pretty familiar. We haven't made a lot of changes here except for a little bit of cleaning up. But again, you see your full set of recent content here. The difference between this recent content and what you see on the Find tab is that this is recent content. It's not recent files. It's recent files, news, lists. It's a whole set of recent content. You can click on the Show All the filter. So you can see here we have files, news, pages, and lists. If I want to look at just lists, let's do that. And that is the list that I just added the item to, so that's why it shows up there. Go back to all. And saved, similar type of thing. We show you all your saved content here. So these are, again, this is not just news content, it's not just files. We show the whole aggregation of that content, including pages and other things. So you can go show all, and you can filter just to news. And you can get back to those articles that you didn't have a chance to finish reading, or you can remove from this list as well. And then finally, settings. Not super exciting, but you can come in here and add multiple accounts. On this specific phone, I have Mark's account added. I have my Microsoft account added, but I can add additional accounts for on-prem. I can add different tenants, and then switching between them is super easy. Okay, so finally, I wanted to talk a bit about notifications. I don't really have anything to demo right now, but we currently have news notifications and we have comment notifications. So if someone comments on something you're working on in a news post or a page, you'll get that list. And also, let me show you one other thing really quick that I forgot to show. Within the news pages, within modern pages in general, we also provide the ability to like. So on the bottom here, you'll see that bar where you can like, you can share, and we also have the ability to comment as well. It's not showing up right now. I'm guessing that's because of there's just a bug in this specific build. But from any modern page, from any news post, you can go in and you can like it, and then you can also comment on it, which is really powerful as we go and start to bring these different types of experiences to the apps. You can also save for later in the upper right, so I can click on that.
So at the very top, you see that bookmark icon, and then you'll get a visual cue.
You should I think the demo gods have had just about enough of me today. That's okay. We are almost done.
So talk about the sharing experience, because I think it's important that people can, through the SharePoint mobile app, obviously you can share news. And if you do that via email, Outlook mobile, or an email client, it would just show up as a link that would, if they were on mobile on the receiving end, and they were to click that link, they would actually be prompted to go into the SharePoint mobile app, not to the web experience.
That's right. So we have deep linking for both iOS and Android. So if you're in an email or in a different experience that has a link to a page, a news post, a list, a file will generally go to OneDrive or to this specific app, but the rest of them will go to the SharePoint app if you have the SharePoint app installed, which is pretty great. You don't need to worry about authentication. It just takes you right to the page or to the list that you care about. Okay, so back I was talking about notifications, so let me just finish up on that. We have those two types of notifications. Notifications to us are a pretty big deal. So you'll see us starting to invest more there. Love to hear feedback on the types of notifications that you find valuable, but really we want the app to be the place you can go to get notified about the things that are important to you in your SharePoint world. And you'll see us working hard to make that become a reality.
Excellent. So we've got another set of questions that we're going to turn to. And while we're doing that, I'll get you started on one that I saw. I'll switch back over, and we want to show the experience side by side, iOS and Android. The first question that I made a note of that I thought would be a good one was similar to the Yammer web part. There is the Stream web part, and the Stream team obviously has been doing a lot of nice work around bringing videos or whole channels of videos into the SharePoint experience, into the Microsoft Teams experience, and certainly the expectation is how does that flow through to the SharePoint mobile app. Maybe an update on just where the Stream team is with their web part. And I can also just share a little information that actually Vishal Sood, who was on our podcast, The Intrazone, he shared with us a little bit about what's coming up for Microsoft Stream. And one of the things they mentioned was an app of their own, a Stream mobile app. So, but maybe your take on where the Stream web part is.
Yeah, so we've been working pretty closely with the Stream team to get the Stream web part working in SharePoint Mobile. You should see it working in Android here pretty shortly, and in iOS we're working on it with them right now, so hopefully that will happen before too long as well. But it's definitely a top priority for us to make sure that we can get that web part working as expected in SharePoint, no question.
Gotcha. So next question, any plans on supporting responsive experience for document sets? This is maybe a loaded question that's probably in your wheelhouse, but something that we get commonly. Maybe we can word the question, as the team has suggested that they're looking at modernizing the document set experience, how would you expect that to flow through when that work is complete if we take that on?
Yes, so I guess there's different aspects of this. The first is we've been getting a lot of feedback that people want to see their document libraries in the SharePoint mobile app. That's been strong feedback since day one, and that's something that we're working on right now. And stay tuned because that will be coming here shortly. And we're super excited about that, and we think that this is an area that you all will be very excited about as well, since you've been asking for it for so long. As documents in general and the document library experience in general on the web continues to evolve and get better, the same will be coming to mobile through the experience that we're building. We're partnering very closely with OneDrive on that to make sure that this experience takes advantage of the cool stuff that's happening on the web and is brought to the mobile experience. So yes, that's definitely coming soon. And once it's out there, we hope you really enjoy it, and we want to get a lot of feedback from you on what's missing, what's great, what needs work.
And I can say from a files experience beyond the SharePoint mobile app, there is a big push to have a common and rich file experience beyond SharePoint. So if you're in a document library today through the web, you get the full power of SharePoint and how you can build things with Power Apps and Flow, how you can view things, pin items, and arrange them to your heart's content with views. And that will all flow through Microsoft Teams, into Outlook, and certainly as you think about how it comes into mobile, that modernization of the document library, both viewing, access, sharing, pivoting on the information, that you'll be able to do that in an expected way, and it's certainly in a mobile fashion, but something that builds off of that same promise of having a common set of experiences and things that you can do with your files and not be limited on the mobile device.
Yeah, I think a good way to think about it is in the same way that we've taken our people card and have worked with others within Microsoft to standardize kind of the general look and feel on the data that's provided across Outlook and different apps, including SharePoint Web. We're trying to do the same thing with documents as well, so that no matter where you go, you have a pretty familiar experience getting to your documents, whether it be a document library or attachments or whatnot.
Awesome. All right, so moving on to the next question, we lightly just mentioned Power Apps and Flow. And I know your team certainly thinks in terms of if people are starting to use Power Apps, and there's lots of things that people can do with Power Apps. The specific question is, if we customize the list using Power Apps, is it also supported from a view perspective in mobile? And then I think maybe we can tack on, if I'm using Power Apps or Flow, it's connected to a list or library, what is my experience in mobile, or are things that you're thinking about in that area?
Yeah, so we, just like documents, we're trying to align a bit better with what the web is doing. Same thing for lists. So when you've gone and built out a list and you have a custom form that you want them to be able to go and enter stuff into, we want to adhere to that and honor that on mobile. So that's work that we have planned in the next quarter or so. We do integrate a little bit with Power Apps right now, but it's pretty loose. Like if you are in a list that has a Power App attached, you can go the ... in the top right and go view that Power App if you have the Power App installed. But we're looking at making the integration tighter so that whatever you do as the creator of the list is honored and taken advantage of in the mobile experience as well.
Yeah, and I think just thinking through the teams working together, obviously Flow and Power Apps is an integrated experience with SharePoint. And obviously the first thing that the Power Apps team did was mobilize forms. Mm-hmm. That's where they started, and they started to now move into the web, where you can embed a Power Apps form using the Power Apps web part in a SharePoint page. So if you can imagine, that's sort of phase 2. I think phase 3 is just getting, when people, especially working with lists, if there's a particular form that they want to build out, it's certainly something we should consider in terms of loading up, instead of our native default form in the app, to be able to load up the Power App, which we're halfway there.
Yep, for sure.
So one of the things that I think is a common question, I'll ask the question specifically how it's asked, but also I think broaden it out in the sense of, in the classic sense of SharePoint, does the mobile interface, does the SharePoint mobile app work with publishing sites? And I think what's behind this question is, if I built a classic portal using the publishing infrastructure, or if I'm using a team site that's in classic mode, what's that experience? A, can I access it? And B, maybe talk about the experience of accessing those types of sites.
So you can definitely access it. In iOS, we take your classic publishing site and we add additional native UI around it to be able to render things like follow and share and your navigation. In Android, we take your classic site and just render it completely as it would be on the web. So in both cases, we do show your classic sites. A lot of times it's not the best experience in mobile because a lot of them are full screen pages. They're not responsive, but you will at the very minimum be able to access those pages without logging in again, which seems like a little thing, but it's actually very valuable if you're going and accessing a lot of different things. So we do handle those within the apps, and we do let you you're signed in already, so you access them pretty easily, but we just render what is the actual page.
So basically it is, when you think about accessing your SharePoint sites, whether it's a classic team site on SharePoint on premises, or soon if people are building out modern sites on premises with SharePoint Server 2019, or pretty much any site that you could have built or will build in the future with either classic or modern in SharePoint within Office 365. The SharePoint mobile app will do its best to render it natively, and if it can't, it renders it obviously via HTML. And I'll give you one proof point. When I'm accessing our company intranet for Microsoft, one of the offerings through the Links tab, or now in the new Find experience, is what we call Microsoft Web. And that currently is a custom portal built on the classic publishing infrastructure. They're certainly looking at how they can do it with the modern infrastructure very soon. But that loads up just fine, and I have a great, because they built their own responsive design, it comes through the mobile app really well.
Yep.
So moving on to next question, in the hamburger menu, they're asking, I think, is it possible to see only the hub menu versus seeing the hub menu and the submenus of the sites themselves? So I think what they're asking is, we want a mega menu. We want one menu to rule them all, especially when we're in hub sites. And so maybe you can talk to, if there's only one menu available, of course they'll see that, but maybe we can hint at a few things that we're working on. Yeah,
so right now, for a hub site, we will show both menus. We don't really differentiate between the two because oftentimes sites have them regardless. That's very interesting feedback. We're always looking at ways to do better with menus because there's so many different ways you can slice and dice those. So yeah, we'll definitely take that back and think about different ways we can make that a better experience. But right now generally we show both.
So this one kind of goes back to people cards. Right now, the people cards in the web have a nice LinkedIn integration, and it's pretty much you validate who the person is with their LinkedIn public profile, and then you'd be able to then access that LinkedIn information on the people card. How do you see that coming into the SharePoint people card experience?
So it should definitely be there soon. The way it works is the team that builds a lot of the logic behind the people card, they build it for all these different products to consume it. And we are getting ready to consume the latest from them here soon, probably in the next month or two, at which time we will take in the latest they have, which I believe includes the LinkedIn profile section as well. So you should see that soon. If you don't see it soon, we'll definitely pick it up as we get additional drops from our partners that build that people card experience.
So two quick ones, which I think are important. One is back to the files experience. If people have pinned files in a document library, will the app show those pinned files?
It doesn't yet. As we add document library support and start to build on top of that, I can see that as being something that comes with that. But initially, our document library support will be fairly straightforward. But things like pinned files, things like custom metadata, those are all on the list of areas we want to continue to grow this document library experience once we add it into the app.
So this one's about basically the AI side of a lot of what you showed. If we're using the Office 365 graph, or what we call the Microsoft 365 or the Microsoft graph, what happens if people have disabled the Microsoft graph in their tenant?
Unfortunately, if you just like the graph, the Microsoft graph in general powers so much of what we build that if you disable it, a lot of the functionality just goes away. We've talked about ways to have that disabling not affect as much as it does because it's a pretty broad stroke, but at the same time, we also want to make sure that the admins who go and flip those switches have complete control over what is done, what is enabled versus not. So we don't have a really good story for that today, but we do get feedback on this every once in a while. It's one of those things that we want to make sure either we have really good messaging for how they go about and talking to their admin to get it enabled, if the admin wants to do that, or ways that we can provide a good experience even if that's not enabled. But we're not quite there yet.
Yeah, so I would just say if that's something you want to follow up offline, I'd love to understand why your company is turning off the graph to help you understand maybe what is actually happening, not just when you turn it off, but the value that you're also turning off.
Yeah.
And we're certainly going to try to convince you to use it, but at the same time, always interested in why you're not and that there are certain valid reasons there. This is kind of a fun, geeky one that I think around permissions and authentication. How does this app work if particular customers set up multi-factor authentication?
So in Microsoft, we have multi-factor authentication and the apps work great. I think a lot of it depends on how you within your own organization set that up, but the apps definitely will support multi-factor auth. Like we use it today with essentially everything in Microsoft, and it works pretty
And it's essentially
well.
When you first set up and sign in, it's not on everything all the time. Once the app has the credentials, and certainly if you're accessing the device through the app, but that first time setup, it will go through all those multiple prompts as they are set up by the customer.
Yeah, I mean, I use this app obviously quite a bit, and I sign in very infrequently because once we get the sign-in credentials, and this depends on how you set up your tenant, and of course, in your network, but once we sign in, we're signed in for a good long time until we have to do anything different.
Gotcha. I'm going to answer this next one and ask it and answer it pretty quickly. It's a very common one, and there's a great location to go read about more, but still back to the Microsoft graph. When people are viewing other people through the people card experience, the one that we showed today, or really anywhere in Office 365, the question is, do people have access to see all of my content? And especially the things that they have not given permissions to view. And the answer is 100% no. You control when you share and show information. My view of, let's say, Nate's people card, I might see some things that we have in a shared environment, a group that we both belong to. If he's shared something explicitly with me, like we're working on a presentation together like today, of course I'd be able to see that. But if he's a manager and he's working on a secret reorganization type document of who's going to report to who, and he hasn't shared that with me and it's not in a common place where I would be able to access it, I would never see that through the people card experience, nor would I see that anywhere where there are experiences built off the Microsoft graph. Huge value point in terms of it being security trimmed, very much at the document and even at the page level. If I'm seeing a page from a group site where news is being created, of course I'll see the news. If news is being created by Nate in another private area, I won't see that news because I don't have access to the site, I've not been invited, and it's a private site. So great question, and we stand very much behind the Microsoft graph that it doesn't expose your content or information in ways that you don't intend. So we're going to end with one more question, then we've got a couple of slides that literally will take 1 more minute of your time if you've hung on this long. Let's see. I think it's just good feedback. When you go to those 3 dots, and there's a lot of great quick access to different parts of the site, the question is there any plan for site owners to be displayed via the triple dot experience? And I see this a lot around, how can I find out who's the admin of the site, especially when people want somebody to be able to create a page or edit something because the information is not right. Is that something you guys would consider, or maybe thinking in terms of a way to find out who the site owner is?
Yeah, we actually have thought about that a bit. We do have this notion of details on the site, so you click on details and you'll see the full URL. But adding to something like, here are the site owners, that's a great idea. Yeah, we've thought about that. We haven't done anything with it yet because it can be a bit tricky if you have a ton of people that are kind of in the owner position, but something we'll definitely look at, yeah.
Awesome. So you can help me here, jump in. We're literally going to be clicking through about 5 more screens, and then we'll say adios, au revoir. But we really wanted to highlight the fact that when you're in the SharePoint mobile app, or as you think in terms of admins across the organization working with a number of different people across a number of different devices, what is the experience? And is it a different set of training for those users, a different way to provide them with support? The answer is no. If you look on the left and the right across these 5 slides, on the left is going to be the experience for Android, and on the right is the experience if you're on iOS. And this is true for iPhone, iPad, Android tablets, Android phones. So again, if you download this app across multiple devices, if you're supporting a larger group, you would have a common experience. This is the search and browse in SharePoint. You saw Nate show you the Find tab, looking for documents, sites, people, and of course, seeing quick access to the things you've most recently done. On the left is Android, on the right is iOS. If you go into finding your content, what we call the Me tab, on the left is Android, on the right is Apple. And if you blink real quickly, I could switch them around, and the target for us design-wise is to have it be a consistent experience, not a disjointed one. However, there are some design patterns that our team should and needs to follow on these different platforms for the best user experience as they're used to on that particular device type. So if you go to the Me tab, this is what you would see. If you go to stay updated from a news perspective, this is the News tab, and I think they've done some really nice work to clean this up, to really hone in on what's important, what you want to do and see without having to go 3 clicks in, or certainly to follow along and save things for later like that. So this is the news experience. If you go in and actually perform a search, this is what it looks like. And Nate showed you this in demo, but again, left and right, you should see it's a consistent experience, not only from a visual perspective, but from a capabilities perspective. I think there may be 1 or 2 things that iOS or Android is ahead versus the other, and some of that is experimentation with what looks right, what people respond to before we roll it out to a broader mass. But on essence, I think the design goals are pretty straightforward. And the last thing is really the core of SharePoint. What do the sites look like? They look beautiful on mobile. If they're a group connected site, a communication site, a hub site, something that we've put a lot of effort in the design for modern, you would obviously see it rendered in a native fashion. But like the question we got, if it were a site that was using classic team sites or classic publishing infrastructure, you would of course see it rendered as best we can via HTML and in a way that gives you access to all your sites. But again, this is what it looks like, especially as you design the home page of your site. It will be mimicked through the experience on mobile, or we'll give you a default one if you don't change anything. So with that, Nate and I want to thank you for your time. We want to encourage you to maybe install and try the device, try the app, install it today. Certainly ask any questions if you have going forward. I'm really easy to find on Twitter at mcashman, that's with a K, MKASHMAN, and Nate is also out on there on Twitter and certainly reachable via email. Whether you reach out to us via Twitter or email, we're very easy to find, responsive, and want to hear what your experiences are, what you like, what you don't like, but more what you like, share what you like, and certainly rate and review and share your comments in the stores themselves so we get that feedback and can help track that even more so beyond the individual across the masses. Nate, any final words?
No, I mean, we really appreciate your time today. I think, as I mentioned, the apps will be rolling out. So if you don't see it yet in the builds that you've downloaded, stay tuned. And then please, like Mark said, download the app, play around with it, send us feedback. Trying to build an experience for SharePoint is something we're very excited about. It's a big opportunity for us. It's also one of those things where there's just so many different things we can do. So your feedback on what we're doing right, what you'd like to see, is very valuable. So we thank you in advance, and thanks for joining.
Yeah, thank you for joining. There's certainly always more to share month after month, quarter after quarter, year after year. Next big moment for us is the Ignite conference, and that's at the end of September. So we're getting around the corner on that one. And Nate, you're going to be there.
Yep.
You're going to be at the booth. You're going to be giving sessions.
Yep.
If you got questions or want to see what's new or shake Nate's hand, certainly I'll be there as well. Please come chat, share your thoughts. And we hope to see you there. If not, we'll see you on the interwebs, on Twitter, and have a great day. Thanks for joining.